Hi, I'm Matt Williams. Welcome to Glimpses, the podcast where we talk about life, love, creativity, and all that spiritual stuff. My guest today is a remarkable human being, the beautiful and talented Angelina Fiordellisi. She has performed on Broadway and off Broadway in numerous regional theaters, television programs, and feature films, and she is a producer. She has produced plays on and off Broadway, winning a Tony Award for Best Revival of a Play, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. And for the past 26 years, Angelina has been the executive director and founding artistic director of the Cherry Lane Theater, the longest-running off-Broadway theater in New York City. And while running the Cherry Lane Theater, Angelina created the Obie Award-winning Mentor Series, a program dedicated to nurturing new playwrights and launching the next generation of American dramatists. This program was so successful. The Mentor Series launched new works by more than 70 emerging playwrights from Anne Washburn, Katori Hall, Rajiv Joseph, and Sheila Callahan, all of whom have since returned to the program to serve as mentors. And Angelina Fiordellisi happens to be my girlfriend, the mother of our two children, and my wife of almost 36 years. I am thrilled to have her on my podcast. Welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So the first thing I want to talk about before anything else, the Goldfinger Review. So I think you need to explain the Goldfinger Review to the listeners.
Well, no one's ever asked me that question. When I was probably 11 or 12 years old, I would have shows in my garage.
And this is in Detroit, in your parents' garage, right?
Yes. In actually Warren, Michigan, on Otis Street, 3822 Otis. And I would invite the neighborhood kids for a nickel, sometimes a dime. And by the end of my tenure there running the garage, it was probably a quarter. But Goldfinger, I talked my girlfriend into wearing a long white men's shirt, and we had black leotards on, and I choreographed to Goldfinger.
The Shirley Bassey song.
Goldfinger. Yes. You can edit that out.
No. And you were 11 or 12 years old. You were conceiving, writing, performing, and producing a play in your parents' garage.
Yes.
Okay. And also, in grade school, from what I understand, you had a cardboard box that you cut out and kind of made into a television set, and you would do the weather report for all the nuns in your school. And the nun was so impressed, she took you from classroom to classroom so you could do your weather report. Is that true?
Yes. That is true.
Okay.
Oh, my God.
And you won a television set.
Yes.
An actual television set, not a cardboard television set.
No, a real TV set on Rita Bell's Stairway to the Stars.
And it was a talent contest.
Which was a local talent contest. And I entered, and my father would take 3x5 postcards and write the address of the studio and put a stamp on each one and handed them out, thousands of them, out to all the relatives, all the neighbors. And of course, I won the first round.
But what did you do as your talent? It was a talent show.
Yes. I did a tap dance.
To?
Oh my goodness.
Wasn't it the Hawaiian?
Oh yes, Hawaiian war chant.
There you go.
Yes.
All right.
I can't believe you know these details.
And didn't you tell your father, you were sitting at home, you said, I'm going to win that television.
Yes.
And you knew you were going to.
Yes.
And you did. And if I remember the story correctly, the TV was sitting on your lap in the back seat of the car, and your dad took you to a burger joint, White Castle or someplace, and you fell asleep holding your television on the way home.
Yes.
Okay, see, as a storyteller, I'm not making that up. That is
No,
all the
you're
truth.
not. That's true.
Okay.
Yes.
So all that tap dancing wore you out, and you just passed out.
Well, I was so excited, yeah, and I won the finals, and I got my TV.
All right, good. So the notion of performing and producing just seemed to have been in your DNA since birth, because no one in your family on either side was in show business. No actors, designers, directors, nothing. Yet, you were always singing, dancing, and performing. Why do you think that is?
I don't know. I think it was my spirit, loved life, and I loved dancing. I loved music. My father was a dancer, and my father taught me every one of the dances when I was very little.
Like foxtrot, samba, those kind of things?
Yes,
Okay.
cha-cha,
Cha-cha-cha.
the waltz.
Okay.
He put my feet on his feet, and he taught me all the patterns.
But somewhere inside you, you had this spiritual nudge, this impulse to conceive, write, perform, and produce plays in your garage.
In my garage, in my relative's basement with all my cousins.
Okay.
They laugh about it now. They tell me how I tortured them and made them do plays in the basement. I did it on the playground at school. I would always cast myself in the leading role.
That's unusual.
Until people started arguing with me about that. And then, for years I did it.
All right, now let's flash forward about 30 or so years. And you're doing the exact same thing at the Cherry Lane Theater. You're producing, performing, charging people more than a quarter to come and see the shows that you either act in or produce or direct occasionally. So, did you ever make that connection that you're doing the same thing you did in your parents' garage when you were 12?
No, I've never thought of it that way.
Think about that. Because when I was thinking about this podcast, I went back and I looked at where you started and I went, everything you did at 11 and 12 years old in your parents' garage in Detroit, you're now doing as a grown woman in New York City at the Cherry Lane Theater.
Yes, I guess that is a connection I hadn't even thought of.
All right. Well, let's talk about the Mentor Series. You won an Obie Award for the Mentor Series. Do you want to explain a little bit about that and how it worked?
Yes. I created a program with one of my oldest, dearest friends, Suzanne Brinkley, who had an outline for a program. But I had had some experience at the New Harmony Project and then at the Carnegie Mellon Showcase of New Plays. And I loved what they did, how they put artists in a rehearsal situation and simulated a preview. I thought that was really clever to be there with the playwright, with a dramaturg and a director and actors and everyone trying to realize the vision of the playwright and ask questions and ultimately, of course, the playwright responsible for how they want to tell the story. And when I thought of the Cherry Lane Theater, when I had the vision walking in and thinking about that, it became so clear to me that this is what I'm meant to be doing, is to support playwrights by creating a situation. At the time in the 90s, a number of award-winning playwrights that we engaged as mentors did not want to use dramaturgs because it was a new addition to the art form of playmaking that they weren't secure in yet, and they didn't trust everyone yet. So we thought, well, Pulitzer Prize-winning playwrights might know something about writing a play, and that they would then act as a dramaturg, if you will.
But explain, excuse me, that these Pulitzer Prize-winning playwrights would mentor a young playwright or a burgeoning playwright,
Yes, emerging playwrights.
emerging
yeah.
playwright, for an entire year or a season, right?
Yes.
And then explain that process, because this isn't a one-time mentorship where they go in the room for a couple hours and walk away. Explain that process.
Well, I enlisted a number of drama, what do you call them? Literary managers and artistic directors in regional theaters across the country, and asked them if they would nominate plays, between 2 to 5 plays, let's say. And of course, a number of the New York institutions as well, NYU, Lincoln Center, Ann Cattaneo from Lincoln Center, a number of these people who would nominate 3 to 5 plays, let's say. And I and 2 or 3 of my colleagues would read through all the plays, and then we would select the top 10 and start sending them to, in the beginning there were 5 plays, 5 playwrights, and 5 mentors. But I found that that was really hard to bring that many artists in. We just didn't have the staff. We didn't have the secured funding to be able to afford that. And it was simpler and better, and we could serve the playwrights better with just 3 plays. So we would send our top picks, 3 each to the 3 playwrights, and then we would do a dance, because sometimes the mentor, for example, A.R. Gurney said, I can't accept that play because I'm writing a play that takes place in a college campus in a theater program.
Interesting.
And that was,
I didn't know that.
yeah, they didn't feel they would be the right influence. So it was never about, it was what resonated for the mentor, where they felt they could really do something to help the playwright, where they felt moved to, so, and what we did, it was a blind submission. So the first page was a number. They didn't know if it was a male, female, an artist of color, or anything. They would read the play and just based on the play's merit, choose a play. And then that's how the selection would happen. And then we would have a private reading, which I found and learned about at the New Harmony Project, how wonderful it was when the playwright read their own play. And then we created an announcement night from that, where the playwright would read his own play, the emerging playwright that was selected, and the mentor would read from a new play that they were working on. And it was a very exciting, welcoming launching of the program. That would happen in the fall. And then we would host a public reading where the community would come in, and we would get responses from the community. The community would ask questions. Did you understand this? Was this? And the playwrights were very gracious and would accept. And of course, with the mentor there, would help them siphon through them all to see what was really helpful and what wasn't. And then the playwright would go back and do a rewrite with the guidance of the mentor. And then we would have, which was unheard of at the time, we committed to producing the play for 2 weeks and bringing it up in front of an audience, because we believed that a playwright learns the most about their play when it's up on its feet before an audience. So we simulated a preview period, and we allowed the playwright to continue rewriting the play. And sometimes the actors would come on stage with fresh pages. That was accepted. And over the years, we developed an audience who accepted that. Sometimes the directors were not happy with that because they'd have to come back in and rehearse. Or some directors liked things to be set before inviting an audience because it is, of course, New York City, and people are very
Critical. They see a lot of theater.
And scrutinizing. And as the years developed, we had a lot of theater people coming. Regional theaters would come and see the work. Agents would come in and see the work, so that the playwrights got the best platform to launch them and get an agent, get productions at regional theaters. It was very exciting when that happened.
Who are some of these playwrights that were mentored, that went through this program, that went on to have amazing careers? It's a long list, but can you just name a few off the top of your head?
Yes. Rajiv Joseph.
You produced his first play, went through the mentor
Yes,
series.
he didn't know he was a playwright.
Okay.
He took a playwriting class on a whim. And
At NYU, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And this was his first play, Huck and Holden.
Huck and Holden, I remember it well.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we took it from the Mentor Project series to off-Broadway production. We also had an off-Broadway production of his work. And Katori Hall, her first play was Hoodoo Love, that we did in Mentor Project, and we also moved it to the main stage, and she gave her her first off-Broadway production. A number of these people, Molly Smith Metzler, who just won a number of awards for her series, Made. Everywhere I look in television and film, I see their names. A lot of shows in New York as well. Anton Dudley has had his plays done everywhere. Now he's writing operas. Bridget Wimberly wrote an opera about Charlie Parker that's being done all over the world.
And she went through the Mentor series.
Yeah, she was in the first year of Mentor
very
Project.
first year.
Yes.
So it's a success, and I know your philosophy has always been, let's not sit around and discuss theory and criticism. Let's roll up our sleeves and put the show up and actually see what we've got. And I think that's what made it so successful, because a playwright can be in a room watching actors bang around on the set, stumble over lines, figuring out intentions, and they learn more from the actual process than all the discussions. Obviously, there's discussions, but I always thought what you came up with was so brilliant because you're doing it. You're not talking about it. You're doing it, and you're learning by the doing.
Mm-hmm.
And
they also learned sitting behind and feeling the audience.
Oh, of course, with it sitting in the audience, especially if it's a comedy, instantly.
Yes.
If it's working or not. All right. So you had all of these brilliant playwrights that you worked with. I started to make a list of some of the mentors: Edward Albee, Lynn Nottage, Amiri Baraka, Sam Shepard, Pete Gurney, Wendy Wasserstein, Alfred Urey, Tony Kushner, Charles Fuller, David Henry Wong, and the list goes on and on and on, right? And you had master classes with a lot of these playwrights where they had a private master class with the playwright and a handful of people, and they got to ask these amazing playwrights questions. What did you learn from being in a room with all these brilliant playwrights? Was there one thing that you took away, a common denominator?
I think it's just how important their storytelling is and how they can move people and open our eyes to things and see things in a new light that we never even considered. I became awestruck, I have to say, with
What is it? The voice of the play? Is it the character? Is it the theme? Is it reinventing a style?
Well, for me, it was always the spirit of a play and how it moved me spiritually. That, to me, is most important. And then viscerally, emotionally, if I could feel something and care about these people, that was secondary. That was the second most important thing. And the rest was just gloss to me.
Well, I think it was Arthur Hopkins, who was an old school theater critic, said, "I want the thought that arises from the emotion, not the emotion that rises from the thought." And the idea, and that's what you're describing, you have this spiritual, emotional response to something, and you may not even understand it. But then afterwards, you go out for a coffee or a drink with your friends, and then you move into the thought process. Why was I so moved? Why did that touch my soul?
But there are so many audience members who are not necessarily in their heads and understanding of the process or only intellectual. There are, I think it's important to open the heart chakra. To me, that was the most important part of storytelling, is to open people's hearts.
Do you think that's either the obligation or the joyful privilege of all artists to open the heart? Do you think, whether you're a painter, dancer, sculptor, composer?
Well, I don't know if it's conscious or not, or if it needs to be conscious. Some people just do it naturally. And it's not that important to all people. But I think that at the core of the best art is the ability to make us feel.
Okay. Eva Le Gallienne or Sarah Bernhardt, one of those greats, right? And I'm paraphrasing here, had a quote, said, when she walked into a theater, it always felt like she was walking into church, into a sacred place. Is the Cherry Lane a sacred place for you?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Oh, yes. Definitely. It has replaced the notion of church to me. Because I feel it is sacred what goes on there, people making art and exposing themselves.
Well, it is a gathering, and there is a shared experience.
Yes.
And there is a shared emotional response, and there is a spiritual connection amongst everyone in the room and on the stage. And for that hour and a half, 2 hours, however long you're there, you are in this sacred space, experiencing life in a different way. So, yeah, maybe it is like
Having
church.
a moment together.
Yeah.
And ultimately, at its best, the theater will do that. Will send people away thinking, feeling,
It's
discussing.
transformative.
Yes.
That I always say that when you sit down in the chair and the play begins, and when the lights come up at the end and you walk out of the theater, you are a slightly different person. Because it was a transformative experience. You learned something about the human condition. You learned something about yourself, or what it means to be a parent, a politician, or whatever it is. Just go down the list of things, right?
Or to look at something a little differently.
Yeah, perspective. Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, working with all of these fantastic playwrights, did that impact you as an actor? Did that change how you approach your work as an actor?
Oh, absolutely. It just informed me to go deeper in the process and of the questions
What do you mean
to
deeper in the
ask.
process? What is that?
To ask questions when you're confused about something instead of doing all the work by yourself, in your imagination and in your emotional makeup that applies to the character, to speak up and ask more questions so that you have a leveled understanding, multi-level understanding of the character and the story being told and how you fit into the story.
Well, it's always, and what the operative word there is you're asking why. You said the word why. And I always say, a bad actor always worries about how they're going to do something. A good actor always asks why. Why am I doing this? Why am I drinking water at this moment? Why am I choosing to get into an argument? Or why am I kissing her at this moment? And that why, that digging down is, and obviously these were living playwrights, so you had them in the room and you could ask them. When it's Shakespeare or Moliere or whomever, you can't corner them with a cup of coffee and ask them why. But that digging down to the why does this play even exist is the first question. Why are you telling this story, right? And it goes from there. Well, I want to talk about a few of the actors you've worked with. Anthony Quinn, Diana Ross. And as I was thinking about this podcast, it struck me, you on an episode of Roseanne were George Clooney's girlfriend.
Yes, that's right.
I think that's something, that was before George Clooney became George Clooney.
Yes.
But you were George Clooney's girlfriend on a Roseanne episode. Janine.
That was my character's name. Yeah. And I got to throw a drink in his face.
Was it a drink or a thing
Was
of
it popcorn?
I think it was a
popcorn.
bowl of popcorn.
Yeah, I threw
So
popcorn
my
in his
wife
face.
threw a bowl of popcorn in George Clooney's face. All right. So when I talk to my students, I use a phrase, tenacity trumps talent. That if you're going to be in show business, whether singer, dancer, producer, director, whatever, you must be tenacious and resilient. Do you agree with that?
Yes.
Because I look at your career, and I know we're talking about the past, but shortly we're going to talk about what's coming up, the future. And I look at your career, and I went, you kept the Cherry Lane Theater, a non-profit theater, running after 9/11, after the 2008 Great Recession, after hirings and firings and board members abandoning you with a huge deficit, and you didn't lie down and die. You rolled up your sleeves, you survived, and you thrived.
Well, it wasn't without the community supporting.
Okay.
Excuse me. Because I thought I had failed. This was 2010, which was the roughest year probably of my life, both personally and
That's
professionally.
interesting you say that, because my next question was, what was the lowest point in your life? So that was 2010.
Yes. Because on my birthday, we got a call from Matisse that she was in a hospital in Hawaii.
Yes, had an accident.
She had an accident, and so I got on the next plane, went to Hawaii. She had cracked above her good eye. She's blind in her left eye, and above her good eye, she had hit the corner. She slipped and fell and hit the corner of a piece of furniture and gouged just under her eyebrow. And so that was one thing that happened in 2010. And then I brought her to Los Angeles. She went to a plastic surgeon, got it taken care of. And then I came home, and a few days later, I got a phone call from a nurse in a hospital in Boston saying that she had our son there and would I like to talk to him. And to make a long story short, Fred had a manic episode, and he ended up in the hospital, and he said, "Mom, get the fuck up here and get me out of here." And I said, "I'll be right there." I didn't think. I got on a train, got up to Boston, went to the hospital, and had to admit him. And I washed out my underwear every night and just went back to the hospital.
Same clothes, same shoes.
Same everything.
No toothbrush.
And then you came and relieved me so that I could go home and pick up some clothes. And in the meantime, I did a reading for Labyrinth Theater Company because they were doing
Tennessee Williams. I remember you left and
marathon.
came back down to do the Tennessee Williams reading for the Labyrinth.
Well, it timed out.
Yeah.
And then I went back. And while I was dealing with that, there was some issues in the Mentor Project. I had an executive director at the time that I loved, who was like a brother, who was having a hard time making ends meet. And it was the Great Recession had hit us finally in 2010, and we were in a $250,000 deficit. And my board of directors didn't want to face it, a number of them, and they left. And so I took a look at this and I thought, well, I'm just a failure and I can't make this work anymore. I need to sell my business. I need to sell the theater. And so I made that announcement in the New York Times. And I quickly got emails, phone calls, people showing up at the theater, letters saying, we can't let this happen. What do you need? What's going on? You can't leave the theater. You're important to our community. And I said, send me your rentals. And so people started sending me rentals, and I had to lay off my staff. I had to quit programming for a couple of years. And in 2 years, I paid off the $250,000 deficit. And then I could start up my programs again. I could hire a development director and get back to getting funding in for the programs, et cetera, and letting the rentals pay for the programs, et cetera. So, yeah, I feel very good about turning that around, but it was with the help of the community.
Well, lyrics from a song are bouncing through my head. I get knocked down, but I get up again. And that was you. You got back up. And I've seen how tenacious you are, and I go, where does that grit come from, that just dogged determination? And is it because you're a street dog from Detroit? Is it because you come from immigrant parents? Mm-hmm. Is it just being the oldest child and proving to the world and yourself you can do it? I mean, that took real determination. And yes, the community rallied around you, but you did it. You did it.
Well, it's all those things, and it's also in my DNA, because both of my great-grandmothers, my maternal great-grandmother was a landowner and a forewoman.
This is in Italy, in southern Italy?
Yes.
Baiano?
Yes.
Okay.
And she ran the farm, and their crops were figs and chestnuts. And my great-grandmother, my bisnonna, on my father's side, she was Angelina. I'm named after her.
Okay.
And she owned a grocery store. She owned and ran a grocery store.
So these women were landowners, had their own business. They were tough, independent women, and that's your ancestry. That kind of the lineage.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you believe? I think I'm quoting this correctly. Carl Jung said that creativity comes from the realm of the mothers. Mm-hmm. And I believe that to be true.
Well, the ultimate creation is life,
there
right?
You go.
So, yes.
We're born to create.
Yes.
Whether it's a skyscraper, a chocolate cake, or a play, we are born to create.
Yes.
And I've watched you not only create plays, I've watched you create homes through our marriage. You've created environments for our kids. You're constantly creating. A lot of people don't know that, but you walk into a space and you go, feng shui. And I used to think feng shui was the Japanese word for total chaos. But instead, you go, oh, no, if we move this here and put the vase there, and what about that? Now, sometimes it drives me crazy. Before I've had my first cup of coffee, you're going, what if we move the couch there? And I go, shut up, let me drink my coffee.
I know.
But you create these incredible environments, and I think a testament is the Cherry Lane Theater. When people walk into that theater, you talked about spirit, you talked about it being a sacred space. Whether people have any religious background or spiritual background, it doesn't matter. They walk in and they go, wow, this feels different. This feels like a living space. And I believe that's because you have pumped your spirit, the spirit, into that space. It is tangible.
And am cognizant of the magnificent spirits who graced the space.
Oh, there you go.
The theater makers throughout its history. It was a place, a launching pad for so many artists, so many. Estelle Parsons, Tyne Daly, Kim Stanley.
Didn't Cary Grant even do a play as a baby actor on the stage there?
He was involved too,
Yeah.
yes. And Earl James Earl Jones.
And didn't Picasso have a one act that was there?
Yes.
And yes.
F. Scott Fitzgerald.
F. Scott Fitzgerald wrote
The
a play?
Vegetable.
The Vegetable.
Was his play. Yes. So it's really about recognizing and respecting the spirit of the place.
Okay,
too.
now that's the perfect transition because this year the Cherry Lane Theater turns 100 years old.
Yes.
And it's got 100 years of spirit and performances and energy and thought, and that space is alive, and you're preparing yourself for a huge transition. And I think we can talk about it because you're 5 days away from this event.
Yes.
You want to tell me and the listeners what's happening?
After 26 and a half years, I am selling my business, selling the theaters, which have 8 apartments above them, to a thrilling, exciting, new, young production company, A24, who happen to be my favorite filmmakers, Academy Award-winning filmmakers.
And aren't they nominated for something like 11 Academy Awards right now?
Yes, right now.
So the A24 is purchasing the Cherry Lane Theater from
Yes.
you, and they're going to move into...
They want to expand into live entertainment,
Okay.
and they want to create a destination point for people to come. And they're very young and very respectful of the 100th anniversary, and they say they want me involved as a thought partner, very millennial.
Well, I want you
of them.
involved as a thought partner. Come on, why wouldn't they? Now, but we say what's really important, I think it can't be underestimated. This sacred space that you've loved on for over 26 years, it was very important to you that it remain a theater.
Yes, that's in the
wasn't-
contract.
It wasn't going to be turned into a restaurant or
No.
condos or whatever.
No.
It will remain, and lo and behold, A24, this vibrant young film television company, is moving in, and they're going to continue and nurture live theater as well as their film projects.
Well, we share a mission, strangely enough, of launching emerging talent.
Ah, there you go.
That's what they do in their work, and a lot of their writers are playwrights, and they want to do their plays and use the pool of talent that they've accumulated over the years.
Well, every theater I know, every successful company I know has a mission statement. And the Cherry Lane has had a mission statement for years. Do you personally have a mission statement for yourself?
Yes.
Do you want to share it or do you want to keep it private? It's up to you.
I don't mind sharing it. It's to heal, illuminate, inspire the conscious spiritual evolution of humanity in my work and in my relationships. That's my basic
Who can argue with that?
mission statement.
I live with it. It's pretty good. It's pretty good stuff. You illuminate me all the time. Chastise me occasionally, but you illuminate me a lot. You always inspire me. That's a perfect segue because I want to talk a little bit about managing a marriage and 2 careers. We've been married for a lot of years, and it hasn't always been easy. We've had some rough years. Mm-hmm. We're still together. Mm-hmm. We still love each other. But when you talk to people or young people ask you about how did you manage a marriage, raising kids, I buried myself in television. I was working 7 days a week oftentimes and 12, 14, 15 hours a day. And you gave up your career for 8 years to stay home with the kids so they would have mom at home. And then after that, you transitioned back into theater, Cherry Lane, running a theater, producing plays, the Mentor series, while raising kids, while building our home, and me flying back and forth to LA. I mean, I look back now, and I have to separate Matt Williams from the woman he's married to and just kind of stand back and look at Angelina Fiordellisi, and I go, I marvel at you. How did you do that? You're an amazing human being. You really are.
Well,
how did you do that?
Me and millions of other women who decide that raising the child, well, we were able to afford it.
Yes.
Number one, that is a gift, a blessing,
The economic
a privilege.
factor. Yes. Yes.
We could afford it for
Right.
me to stay home, and deep in my DNA and ancient, going back, thousands and thousands of years.
Grandmothers and great 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 grandmothers. Yes.
All my people, the Lani people who were who first settled Naples, being at home with the kids, mothering the children was the most important job that you could have, and I believe that today too. Being a mother who's present for your children, a hands-on mother as much as possible, even those who can't afford to be there all the time. But when you are there, it's so important because the children learn about the world through you. You don't want them learning about the world through people who are not as invested, who don't care as deeply as much as you. That's why when we would go on trips, or I would go to the New Harmony Project to develop plays while the kids were babies, I always had my mother with me, or we had your sister with me. We always
Family
had
was
family.
always family. Always
Family. And I believe that we need to get back to that, where the community is family that's raising the children, And I know that places in New York, too, there are communities where people look out for each other. And that's so important that children grew up in that environment.
Going back to family, I can't remember if it was the 7th or 8th year of our marriage, and I was so busy. It was right after Roseanne. I was the Disney deal. I was doing Home Improvement, and you were home with the kids, and I was never there, and we were arguing, and we got into one of those hissing, screeching,
Horrible fight.
Horrible
Probably
fights.
the worst of our marriage.
And I turned to you and I went, does this mean we're going to get divorced? Because in my family, the way you resolve arguments was to get divorced. And I said, Angelina, are we going to get a divorce? And you stopped and looked at me like I had 3 heads. And you go, what are you talking about? We're just arguing. Don't you know we will never get a divorce? That's not in my family. That's never going to happen. And somewhere in the back of my mind, I went, oh, really? Oh, okay. So we can just argue. Okay.
Yeah,
And that
so
was-
interesting how differently we grew up.
Oh, well, I came from divorced
So
family.
different.
My mother married 6 times. My grandfather was married, 7 times. That's what I said. If you got into an argument, you got a divorce. Your family will argue to their last breath, but they're not going to break apart. Family was the core, the center of the universe, and that's what I appreciate.
And there's always a way to work it out.
Yes. Just say yes, dear. Agree with your wife.
That's right.
That's why we've 35, 36 years.
Yeah.
No, I did a post recently. It said, after being married to you for over 35 years, I've learned the 3 most important words are not I love you. They're I hear you. Because what I did early in our marriage, I did the man thing. You would come to me and go, I can't believe the kids did this, the plumber did this. And I go, okay, stop. Just call the plumber, do this, do this, do this. I fixed your problems, which only pissed you off that much more because you didn't want me to mansplain anything or fix it. You wanted me to sit and actively listen and identify with your emotion. It took me about 7 or 8 years to finally realize that. Just keep your mouth shut and listen. And most things kind of work out.
Well, wasn't that the premise of Home Improvement? Women are from Venus, men are from Mars.
Well, the premise of Home Improvement that David and Carmen and I came up with is that men and women should never, ever live together because they think differently, they speak a different language, they are incompatible. And that was from Deborah Tannen's book, You Just Don't Understand. And she said that men think differently, they have a different language, a different vocabulary, women have a different vocabulary. So yes, that's what drove 200 plus episodes of that show. And I write about this in my book. I'm going to plug my book for a second.
Sure, go right
It's
ahead.
called Glimpses, a comedy writer's take on life.
Ka-ching, ka-ching.
No, it's not ka-ching. But the ka-ching is
I know.
all going to profits.
I know.
Don't give me crap. every penny from this book is going to be donated to charities that help children.
I know.
So it's glimpses a comedy writer's take on life, love, and all that spiritual stuff. And one of the things I write about is that during those home improvement years, almost every argument we had ended up
Oh my God. That was horrible.
home improvement episode, to the point that one night you came with the kids, as you did every Friday, God bless you, to the live taping in front of a live audience, right? And Tim and Jill are doing a scene, and I went, oh crap, I didn't warn Angelina. And I leaned over and I grabbed your hand and I said, some of this scene may sound familiar. And what I had done was taken almost word for word a conversation we had at breakfast and turned it into a home improvement scene and ultimately an episode. And do you remember the conversation, what it was about?
I'm trying to think which one, because there were several.
Well,
there were a number of them that were surprises.
This goes back to marriage and careers. And one day we were having breakfast and you said, look, you're so busy with work and I've got the kids and all we ever do is get together to talk about what needs to be done at the house. You've got your time, I've got my time. I think we need our time. I think we need time where it's just you and me. And of course I said, yes, of course. What do you have in mind? And you said, ballroom dancing. And my butt cheeks tightened. And I went, oh God, anything but that. Let's go to demolition derby. Let's go shark hunting, anything but ballroom dance. But you really wanted us to take ballroom lessons.
I wanted to do something. We had to have a hobby together. We did nothing together.
Well, but hold the family and the kids together and work. And I think we went to 2 dance lessons at Fred Astaire Dance Studio.
I think you lasted for 2.
I lasted 2, but that ended up becoming a home improvement episode with, of all people, the dance instructor.
Ann Miller.
Ann Miller was the dance instructor. And she was well up in her years, could still move. And I remember Tim dancing with her, and he spun her and pulled her hand so hard when he spun her that there was a small tear in her skin on her hand, and we had to stop the rehearsal and take her to the hospital and bandage her hand. I think she wore a glove then for the taping. But anyway, the whole point is that conversation at breakfast became a home improvement episode. Mm-hmm. So you've always inspired me. When I was a playwright, writing my very first plays, some one-acts, you graciously, God, this is the connection back to the garage and the Cherry Lane. I didn't think of it till just this moment. We sat around the table. We read the plays. This is before we dated. I hadn't even kissed you.
Right.
Right?
I remember.
And
at 666 West End Avenue.
Yes.
19J.
And
your place.
And we would sit around the table. You would read the play, and you would ask me, well, why is this going, why and you never said, this is how you fix your play, or this is what you just kept asking me, why is she saying that now? And you would even do an improv with me. And because Suzanne Brinkley was directing the one acts, and she was there in the room, and I go back and I go, you were always inspiring me. And we were talking about this the other day over breakfast about something I'm working on. You said her superpower, this character superpower, is she inspires people. And I thought, that is your superpower. It really is. You inspire people. You inspire me, you inspire kids, you inspire playwrights, you inspire your staff, actors. You inspire people. And you do that in a way that's not selfish. You just inspire and nurture people. You're very nurturing. And that's really a gift. That's your superpower.
Well, thank you. That's great.
You're welcome.
I don't think about that consciously, but I'm inspired by you.
Well, I'm going to end or start to wrap up this podcast with something my father said about a couple years before he passed away. My father said to me, son, do you realize that everything good in your life happened after you met Angelina?
Oh.
And that's true. That is so true. You have inspired me. You've built a life with me. You are my twin flame, my soulmate. You are my life partner. And I thank you for all of that. And I thank you for being on this podcast, and I love you dearly.
Oh, thank you for asking me, sweetheart, and for preparing so well. I
did my homework.
I saw that paper. I was like, whoa.
Well, I did my homework.
What's going on? I should have asked for questions in advance.
No,
so
then
I'd be prepared and well-spoken.
I wanted to catch you off guard and get you. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for asking me. I love you so much.
I love you so much.
You're the best.
No, you're the best. You're the best. Let's not get silly. Okay, that's it for this podcast. Thank you all for joining Glimpses. As you go about your day, I encourage all of you to take some time to look around and catch a glimpse.